So a very warm welcome to all our viewers and welcome to a new edition of Africa Today, our program bringing you all the latest news and events happening inside the Black Continent. My name is Angie Meher, and as usual I'll be joining you straight away. We begin with a look at some of the news making the headlines, where top development banks from the G7 countries made a landmark joint pledge on Monday to pump $80 billion into African companies and projects over the next 5 years. We have more details in this story.
Top development banks from the G7 countries made a landmark joint pledge on Monday to pump $80 billion into African companies and projects over the next 5 years. The International Monetary Fund has estimated sub-Saharan Africa will need an additional $425 billion between now and 2025 to fight COVID-19 and reduce poverty levels, now being exacerbated by the pandemic. The region is also being hit hard by climate change, and Monday's pledge was the first time the development finance institution from the United States, DFI, Europe and other group of 7 have made a collective commitment to the African continent. The Chief Operating Officer of the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, DFC, said that investing more in Africa was now a top priority under President Joe Biden's administration. This step comes as Western nations fight to counter rapidly expanding Chinese and Russian economic and political influence in Africa with its fast-growing populations and vast mineral resources. Monday's pledge followed the G7's weekend promise to provide $1 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses to poorer countries over the next year.
And continuing with our news, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa on Monday urged the group of 7 countries to help finance the World Health Organization's program to boost COVID-19 testing, diagnostics and vaccinations. He was joined at a G7 summit in England and said the G7 countries should support access to COVID-19 tools accelerator to plug the $16.8 million funding gap for this year. We have more details in this report.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has reiterated the need for a patent waiver to allow Africa to manufacture its own COVID-19 vaccines. The president said that the continent's destiny was now in its own hands as many countries report a surge in virus cases. Only about 2% of the continent has been vaccinated so far, with some countries facing vaccine shortages. The South African leader, who was guest at the just concluded G7 summit, said that the continent wants to manufacture its own vaccines for more than 1.2 billion people. He also noted that he had come to the G7 with a proposal about the waiving of the WTO TRIPS, trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, measures that Africa now wanted to manufacture vaccine on its own. President Ramaphosa said also that South Africa was in a desperate situation with coronavirus cases rising and hospital beds filling up. He said that the continent had been left behind on vaccination and put on the back foot.
And still with our news, the African Investment Promotion Agency's Forum has wrapped up its meeting and sessions and panel discussions late Monday after agreeing on a number of recommendations to promote investment in the African continent, with a resolute decision to hold the first of its kind of forum in June of every year in a different African state. We have more details in this story.
Chairman of the General Authority for Investment in Free Zones, GAFI, Mohammed Abdul Wahab, delivered the recommendations of the IPA's Africa Forum 1 held in Sharm el-Sheikh. These recommendations include launching by the end of 2021 a consulting entity having the heads of African investment promotion agencies, private sector and global consulting firms to identify and promote investment opportunities on the continent. The attendees also agreed on launching a digital platform presenting investment opportunities in the sectors of priority as well as the investment of legislation of each African state. The senior investment officials agreed on setting a strategy to bolster investment in Africa's manufacturing sector and build supply chains enabling African states to reduce their dependence on imports and reinforce their competitiveness globally. Another major step was the decision to hold the forum in June of every year and setting a communication mechanism to increase technical cooperation among African IPAs. African investors will have to exchange visits among to identify investment opportunities, and the attendees agreed to study the establishing an academy to train African IPAs workers. African IPAs Forum 1 kicked off in Egypt's Sharm el-Sheikh on June 11th, having a slogan, Growth for Integration. The forum is the first of its kind and had as participants ministers and chairpersons of investment promotion authorities at 34 African countries.
And we're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest, Dr. Raouf Gaafar, our economic expert. It's a very good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon to you, my dear.
Dr. Raouf, let's talk a bit about the African Investment Promotion Agency's Forum, which wrapped up its final sessions on Monday in the Red Sea resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh, of course hosted by Egypt. It's the first forum of its kind to be held in Africa. How did you see this gathering? How did it promote, innovative investment solutions for Africa?
We needed to do that. I mean, Africa was, we know it is rich as far as resources are concerned, and badly exploited. And it was about time that the African countries sit together and try and find a way by interacting and complementing each other to improve the economic situation in the continent as a whole. Mm-hmm. So this was a very, I should say, good initiative to have this forum, mm-hmm. and I'm sure this is the first one of many more to come.
Yes, indeed.
They have discussed in this forum how can government and private and public sector work together, mm-hmm. and find best way to complement each other. They have again discussed, if needs be, whatever legislation that needs to be changed in order to improve the environment for investment, etc., etc. They have discussed together how to complement on infrastructure projects so that the continent is linked. Whether by air or by sea or by roads or by you name it. I mean infrastructure in general, mm-hmm. and how to introduce and domiciliate technology and industries in African countries to produce things that can be exported to the different world markets, mm-hmm. And how to attract whether direct investments or indirect investments or through financial institutions into different African countries so that construction and project industry is built in order to, from one side, to improve the economies of different countries and to open new markets for the products, etc., etc. So the discussions were very broad, and I'm sure that a lot of positive reactions will be seen, and a lot of memorandum of understanding and agreements would be signed in this direction very, very soon.
Indeed. Now, Dr. Raouf, the forum addressed, as you mentioned, of course, many issues, and some of them related to investment opportunities in Africa. And we saw the Prime Minister, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, speaking about how Africa really has an unlimited potential, to turning into a global hub for industrialization. Now, what has been hampering, African states from tapping these massive resources and really shifting to industrialization of their nations?
If we go back history, first of all, most of Africa was occupied by foreigners, by Europeans particularly, and they were exploiting all the resources available to their own benefit. And they did not care about the locals, they did not care about the Africans themselves. So this was one of the things that kept Africa behind for so many years. Now, again, as soon as we started, and Africa started to get together and think of an African Union in the future, etc., came the COVID-19 that again hindered some of the steps that were foreseen to be taken. So, I mean, but now, in spite of all these challenges, I am sure that Africa has the will to start and will start, I'm sure,
Yes.
together. And we understand as Africans that nobody will help us more than each other. So we have to complement each other, and we have to integrate with each other so that Africa becomes, as it was once, the basket of food for the whole world. It becomes the basket of products for the whole world.
Now, speaking to this point, the African Free Trade Agreement is also a major step, really, towards continental integration. However, the deal faces a few hurdles here and there, but many African nations have committed to it. How do you see this deal changing the way that African countries do business together?
If we're talking integration, we have to eliminate whatever boundaries, whatever frontiers that can hinder any development.
Yes.
Now we can look at the European Union as a model. We can see that there is no, free passage between different countries, free trade between the different countries, and this is the model we have to follow. And I'm sure that in this direction we have achieved a few steps. It will take us a long time, but again, we have to start somewhere. But there is no development without integration.
Yes.
And you have to open the borders so that everybody can move freely from one place to the other and help each other. If a country has an experience that another country doesn't, it helps. If a country has a resource that another country doesn't, it again provides. So I mean, this agreement will continue, and more countries will participate. And I am sure that the idea of having an African Union, although very ambitious, but doable, and I'm sure it will take some time, but eventually will be achieved.
Absolutely. We've seen very interesting statements made by the Prime Minister, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli. He spoke about how, Africa's reliance on primary commodities made it more resilient, in the face of the economic shocks and global fluctuations, especially during the recent period with the coronavirus pandemic. How do you see, Africa's survival in terms of the global issues with the coronavirus?
First of all, as you said, Africa does not lack raw materials, does not lack resources.
Yes.
I mean, whether natural resources, whether mineral resources, whether human resources even, which is the most valuable resource. I'm sure we lack perhaps finance, which can be, easily reached if needs be. Of course, Africa so far is not very wealthy. We suffer. We have a lot of challenges as far as just to face a pandemic like the corona pandemic is in itself a big challenge.
Yes.
We might not, most of the African countries might not have the means to provide vaccines and what have you, but we are trying to help as much as possible. Egypt, for instance, is trying to help by providing equipment and providing whatever aid the other countries need. Again, now we're starting to hear about in industrialized countries providing big numbers of vaccines. I mean, it will take its time, maybe longer than predicted, but again, eventually we will combat the COVID-19, and we will face the challenge, I'm sure, and will be at the end very in our
Indeed.
endeavor, inshallah.
Indeed. Dr. Raouf, now against, all this talk of African struggles and challenges with regards to industrialization, etc. Let's talk a bit about some of Africa's strengths, in your opinion. What are the strength points for African nations, and how can they work on them? How can they begin, their economic reform using these strengths?
First of all, we are talking young continent full of human resources.
Yes.
Education is a must. Health is another. Once you do that, you provide that, then you are utilizing and optimizing one of the most important and rich resource, if I may say. Again, Africa is full of mineral resources which represent a major I should say foundation for any development. One third challenge that is almost over now is that we had a lot of unrest in the continent, a lot of conflict, whether ethnic conflict or maybe military even conflict.
Yes.
And I am sure that a big effort has been done in this direction, headed by Egypt, and we managed, mind you, to establish security and peace in different parts of Africa. And I repeat what our president said, it cannot be a development without peace, and cannot be peace without development. So anyway, these are major challenges that are still being confronted, but they will be overcome very, very soon.
Right.
Resources are there, and they were utilized by foreigners. Now is about time that we use our own resources for our own good, and we don't mind importing technology, importing know-how, using money coming from industrialized world, but on the basis of mutual respect and mutual benefit.
Absolutely. I'd like to thank you very, very much, Dr. Raouf Gaafar, economic expert. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and your insight. That's all the time we have for today's edition of Africa Today. We do hope you have enjoyed it. You're in the company of myself, Angie Meher. Many thanks for watching.